Hello and welcome to the Screen Chronicles. I'm Colby. With me as always is Steve. And if you're listening to us, you'll know our special guest today from The Last Kingdom as Æthelhelm. Adrian Schiller, welcome to the Screen Chronicles.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks. It's a lovely day here I'm in Norfolk in East Anglia in England, which is, if you don't know where that is, it's the sort of ear-shaped bit on the side.
Okay.
On the right-hand side.
Very cool. And how are things there with the lockdown and everything? Are things opening up now? It's
opening up now, yeah. I mean,
okay.
We hope that it's not too early. We don't really know. But, yeah. I think that people in general are being more sensible. So with a bit of luck, it'll be all right. I mean, people do wear masks. They're observing the social distancing mostly. So we'll see. I mean, if we get a resurgence, we get a resurgence, don't we? So.
Yeah. Exactly. But so what do you do during the day to keep yourself busy?
Well, I'm here. I'm on the coast in the country. So I'm here with my family, with my partner and my little son, and we go out sailing and we go for long walks. And
nice.
My partner plays the piano. She plays the piano, so she does that. I play the guitar, so I do that. And
beautiful.
Bit of writing and reading and cooking and,
Hey, it sounds like a
do
good
what
life.
we can to stop ourselves going mad and waiting for work to restart, really.
Yeah. Have you heard anything, if there's like a rough plan? Season 5 was just announced. Have they said anything
by the way.
Where they think when they might start filming or anything like that?
Well, I think the plan is to start at the end of the year. But I think at the moment, everything is very tentative and it is to do with COVID. So, I mean, that's what they want to do, and we'll wait and see whether it actually happens. I mean, I think it's more likely than not that we will start filming before Christmas, but I don't think anyone's in a position to guarantee it.
Right.
Just because the world is what it is at the minute. So
just like everything else in the world right now, nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Steve and I really bonded over The Last Kingdom. It became our favorite show very quickly. Æthelhelm is introduced in season 3, and right away we can tell this guy's going to be tough. He doesn't take crap even from Alfred. So, how did you become involved with The Last Kingdom?
They asked me. I mean, it was very nice. It's one of those jobs that crop up fairly infrequently, but in this particular case, they just said, "Do you want to come play this character?" And I had a look and thought, "Yes, I do." I mean, I think that the way it's structured, the way the sort of ongoing process of writing means that they can experiment with characters and decide whether they want them and whether they've got legs and they want to carry on going with them. So
true.
I think in the first place, it was a sort of probationary few episodes.
Oh, really?
Well, I guess, I don't know. I mean, there's a balance of characters. So, you've got the sort of young muscly boys and the sexy girls and the sexy muscly girls and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But then you've got the greybeards like me, and they got rid of Odda by that point, and
it's true.
Bioka was on his way out, I suppose, in a way. And also, of course, Alfred himself was dying, so
yeah,
they needed to get their elder statesman in.
Absolutely.
Lined up. So I think maybe I got the job because everyone else died.
Oh. Well, it's interesting you say that because we talked to Harry McIntyre, and he told us about how he wasn't originally planned to be in a lot of the scenes in the second half of season 1, but he thought that maybe he had such a strong performance early on that maybe they liked his character there, and that might have helped him go. So it's interesting.
Well, I mean, Harry, he certainly did have a very strong performance, and I think that he's much missed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he had a very, a suitably dramatic end, which I think his character had very much earned.
Yes.
But yeah, I think probably they, if the writers, if your character takes the imagination of the writers and the fans, very importantly. I mean, there's feedback all the way through from the fans. People will be listening to that. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to do what you want. I mean, look what happened to Star Wars, but that's, or indeed Game of Thrones if it comes to that. But
yes,
you hit the nail on the head with that.
But people, I mean, the producers and the writers will have an ear for these things. They have to. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing those jobs, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that the rivalry between Æthelhelm and Elswith, and to an extent with Uhtred, they found to be, quite a what's the word, fecund. And it's good for building stories on, so they've pursued it.
Yeah, especially in season 4, you really stir the pot quite a bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think, obviously Æthelhelm is not a very cuddly character, but he's not out and out evil. I mean,
True.
He just wants his grandchildren to inherit, and really everybody in the one way or another, pretty much all the main characters in the series are looking to consolidate their power one way or another. So, I mean, he goes about it in a way which maybe you don't like, and there may be other characters which people feel are more deserving, but he's not really doing anything very, very different.
Yeah.
I mean, he may involve murdering children and poisoning ladies, but
Wow.
Yeah, that's something even in the first episode of the 4th season that you even bring up, because a lot of people get behind Uhtred. We love Uhtred too, but he does like to, I guess, kind of use people when he wants something though too, and it's even something you point out, your character points out when Edward, he's like, oh, so when did your dream of united England come about, Uhtred? And you're like, oh, well, when it aligned with his.
Well, that's when it realized it was in your interest. Yeah. Absolutely. And Uhtred is well, how do you put this nicely? He's a mass murderer. Somebody put together a video which I saw on I think on one of the fan sites or something. I mean, in the first 3 seasons, he's killed like 120 people with his bare hands.
It's a matter of perspective.
It really is a bit of a matter of perspective. If you're just going to put it down to straightforward deaths.
Yeah, Uhtred wins that one.
Yeah.
So you get on the fan sites. What sort of reception do you kind of see or get from your end?
Well, I don't that much, to be honest. I think there are maybe other people in the cast who do more. Every now and then, in the cast WhatsApp group, someone says, "Oh, have you seen this?" or "Have you seen that?" So stuff pops up, and that was quite a funny video. It just went through all the times that Uhtred stuck his sword in somebody, or strangled someone, or threw them off a building, or whatever it might be, and then it had a sort of a running total at the bottom, on the crawl on the bottom.
Well, no, I have to see this.
I know we got to look that up after this. That's great. So backing it way up, how did you even get into acting?
Oh well, I'd always wanted to. I spent a bit of time getting a degree and things like that because parents insist on you doing things like that. Well, some parents do anyway. But I did a lot of amateur stuff while I was at university, just in the drama society and so on there. And we put on some fairly decent shows. And then there was a group of us who formed a little theatre company, who were acting first of all it was sort of semi-professional and then professional just immediately after that. So I sort of segued into it, and then eventually, I suppose it gets careers like that get their own momentum or they don't. And I was lucky enough that it sort of did early on. So I got an agent and I got better jobs, and a few years further down the line, I felt that I could, genuinely say I was an actor rather than a sort of enthusiastic amateur.
Very cool.
But that was 30 years ago now, so I think I can say it.
You can say it, absolutely. And who are some of your bigger inspirations?
Well, there's so many. I mean, I was looking at that question, and it's an odd question, really, because I don't just. I mean, you can look at Marlon Brando or people who are fantastic film actors who everybody has seen. But I think for me, the thing that's actually more exciting is just working with somebody and finding it to be a very productive relationship, or just the honor of literally the honor of being on set and watching somebody of. I mean, I did a while ago. I did a small part in a film of the Shakespeare play Richard II, which was for Channel 4, I think. It was the Patrick Stewart was playing John of Gaunt, and there's that that very famous speech of the Sceptred Isle. There's all that the thing about England, and we were filming it in I think a 14th century church in London, St Bride's. They use it for a lot of film work. It's absolutely beautiful. But we're just sitting there in this fantastic, beautiful, ancient building, and Patrick sitting there giving it large, and it was just fantastic. That sort of thing. I mean, you can admire people from afar, sure. And there are too many to choose from, really. But, I mean, the being actually right in the middle of it with somebody of that caliber, that's really something.
So speaking of working with people on The Last Kingdom, all we hear about is how cohesive everybody is from the cast and crew. Could you compare your experience?
They're lying.
Yeah.
They're lying.
The lying? Okay.
God, everybody hates each other. They're all bitching. Right. Don't believe any of that shit. Jesus. Yeah, I'm sorry to bore you, but actually they are a really nice group of people.
Oh yeah,
and I think also because we're all shooting on location, we're all based in Budapest, and everybody's away from home. Well, more or less everybody's away from home. It's a very it's a very tight knit group. Inevitably, people are spending the large part of 6 months in the same city. I mean, a few other people, but basically each other. So you eat together, party together, sleep together sometimes, maybe. But again, I'm not saying a word. No, that's a lie. Nobody in The Last Kingdom ever has sex under any circumstances.
Good.
We figured. But
yeah. I don't think they do with each other. It's like a bit disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah,
but it's a really nice group of people, yeah, and it's a lovely place. Budapest is a wonderful city, so it's very, very enjoyable.
Awesome.
Who do you like doing scenes with then? Who do you like to interact with or watch from afar from The Last Kingdom?
Well, I mean, I love the scenes with Elswith in the last one. Breda that was great fun.
She beat you up a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, she did. There I was thinking she was going to be my buddy. Well, I mean, I got to beat up Uhtred a bit. That was quite good fun.
Yes, you did.
I like the sort of intriguey stuff, which I suppose most of it is. I mean, and I like that little scene that I shot with my daughter, where when I was asking her whether she was, what the chances were of getting another child, and she said, well, Edward wasn't really showing much attention. And I was telling her she really should try harder, which is
great father.
Really kind of weird. But,
yeah, it is.
There we go. You really should try a little harder, darling.
Got to strengthen the line.
Yeah. After all I taught you. And then of course, and the stuff with Elswith with the poisoning, I thought was fun to play. It was interesting stuff. But I mean, I suppose because Æthelhelm's always trying at least to stay one step ahead. One step ahead of the opposition, one step ahead of other people who are plotting. I mean, it's perfect. His daughter is married to Edward, and they've got a son, and that son should be the Ætheling. And he's got every reassurance that although Edward might have been, going off being a boy beforehand, that was not a real marriage, and those children are not legitimate. So he's absolutely within his rights, really, and he can see what Elspeth's up to.
Absolutely.
So it's difficult to really see how he is being any less, how he's being any more wily than she is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
Edward in the middle of it just doesn't seem to know what's going on with all that stuff anyway. He doesn't seem to express any sort of interest in any of it. So
he doesn't want anything to do with his sons. He just or his wife. No, he
doesn't like his wife. He's not even sure about his ex-wife.
So what kind of research did you do getting ready for the role?
Well, with this, because it actually came very quickly, so really it was just a question of get a hold of the scripts and have a good look at that. I mean, it's usually reading round the subject matter would be more advisable or important. In this particular case, it isn't really, because the scripts diverge so much from the books that the books don't really.
Right.
The books are more of a bit of a diversion in a way from what you're looking at. As far as the period is concerned, I was, fairly clear about the period already. So
Okay.
Sometimes it's better to just sort of stick yourself in the middle of that. What do you actually do? Where, who are your friends? Who aren't? Just trying to work all that stuff out. But it was, I was in the middle of something else, but I think it was only about 3 weeks or so notice before it started, or maybe a month, something like that. I can't remember.
Nothing. Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. With 6 months, another 6 months coming up this time. It's worked out. I mean, it's been a very happy offer for me. I very much enjoyed it, and I think it's great stuff.
Awesome.
Did you know you were going to make it into season 5?
In the first place, I just knew I was going to do a minimum of 3 episodes in season 3. So everything beyond that has just been, Christmas, frankly.
Awesome. Yeah,
I don't think I'll survive season 5 though.
I was surprised to survive this season. I was kind of, because normally the people who cross Uhtred, they normally don't make it out of the season, but Heston has made it, and you made it too. You were eating an apple
so
at
I
the
reckon
end.
I'm saving that one up for the next.
Yeah. It's probably going to be a big moment.
I just made it. We're not sure if Elspeth's going to make it. People will expect somebody who has plotted against the protagonists to such a degree. Right. Eventually, he's just going to have to. It's going to come up against it. I mean, it's unavoidable. But apart from that, all the stuff I read on Twitter, particularly, everyone just said, "Oh, we hate him so much. Why won't someone kill him? Every time he opens his mouth, I want to punch him in the face." So, which is fine. That's what I'm there for. So. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it. I mean, I don't know for sure. None of it's. Everything about season 5 is shrouded in mystery. But I don't know. I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, I think that would be my prediction too. I think that's probably going to be a big moment in season 5. Maybe like some fan satisfaction or something. I don't know how though. It'll be interesting. I'm interested in the influence Aelfward, your grandson, Aelfled's son, is going to have from you going forward. I think that's going to be a big part of season 5 too. Is he going to be more influenced
I don't know what the time jump is yet.
That's a great point.
I mean, if it's years, then he'd be a much bigger boy. And that makes things different. It also, I don't know whether there's, and I can't remember historically whether she had any more children. So that stuff is all that they're very important. I mean, my guess is they'll take a bit of a leap. It just allows you to make a few, basic changes if you have to carry on with, what I mean. Right. It's a convenient sort of writing thing, isn't it? To just say, right, if we go 2 or 3 years forward, what's changed? Now, you don't need very much. You can kill off a couple of people if you don't want them. You can add in a couple of new ones if you do. Right. That sort of thing. So right. My guess is they'll do that because it's just helpful. Absolutely. The unfortunate thing about that is that the 2 young boys that play the Aelfward and Ethelstan are fantastic. So there's probably is going to be a time jump, I'm guessing. So we're going to be losing those actors. Well, yeah. But I mean, they were great though. They were really good. Yeah, but I mean, again, it'll be nearly 15, 16 months or something from the end of from finishing shooting the last one to this, which is they'll be quite a lot bigger. That's true. And young kids change much more quickly than adults do. So I think that there might. I mean, I don't know, but I would have thought. Yeah, maybe they could probably carry on. I'd love to see more of that Ethelstan. He was really, really good. That kid. Yeah, he's excellent, isn't he? He's really good. God. Yeah.
And you have some really good moments with him, too, when you kind of become a little friendly with him to see if he's Ethelstan, really Ethelstan. That was a great scene.
Yeah. Yes, he gives those sort of butter and melt looks, and yeah, he's really good, really good lad. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Now there was a real life Æthelhelm. Did you do any research on him?
Well, I looked him up, and I sort of know who is, where he came from and so on. But again, it's I mean, I must be coming across as a very lazy actor, but I think the point is to play a character on the page,
right.
And there's nothing really that informs that very much taken from that. It's very much Bernard Cornwell's invention, or Stephen's invention, I suppose. But he's not that person, and he was bugger all known about him apart from when he was born, when he died, who his parents were, when he was brothers were, and so on. So, but I mean, yes, he certainly exists.
One of our favorite parts too was the part where you and Citrigir meet up. He starts to take the town, and he offers you this sort of choice whether to duel him or to surrender. And you choose to surrender.
Yeah.
And then he kills all the guys, though. So what was the other option then? If you would have fought him, would all the guys have lived? Or
no, they would have all died, and I would have died.
Yeah.
I think that him murdering all the guards was just him being a bloody-minded Dane, but I don't think that was the expectation.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think Æthelhelm expected him to murder them. If I
you seemed kind of disturbed by it.
Well, I mean, it was a sort of unnecessary bit of rubbing my nose in the fact that we'd been quite so defeated. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing I could have done about it anyway. The place was essentially undefended. There might have been a few guards who had done a very good job, but the town wasn't even really garrisoned. Everybody was off fighting in Mercia, so we'd been left undefended by the king, and against my advice. So I don't.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that when Sigfrid does that, he's just underlying that he is, basically without mercy.
Gotcha. Interesting.
But if basically someone's pointing a gun at your head and says, well, you can either surrender or I'll shoot you through the head, then, how much choice have you got?
Exactly.
I mean, you can say, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was the situation.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Another funny, I don't know, just an interesting bit that we thought from was when you were with Aelswith in the prisoner room, and I think was it Aelfled, Colby, that asks like, "Oh, what do you know away?" or something.
She said she would like throw herself on the knives, and you say you know a way to do it with a cloth.
Oh yeah,
and we were just
that sounds terrible.
How would that work with a cloth? We were just like,
that sounds terrible. To use a cloth to off yourself.
I assume it's just to choke yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting. But then Aelswith gives you a great idea about the purple flower, and you just see the light in your eyes. Oh,
well, I think that the yes, exactly. But I think the fact that even when they're all of them, imprisoned by Danes, that the thing that's really top of his agenda is to try and get rid of Aelswith.
It is pretty awesome.
Like, yeah, we might all die, but at least she'll die first.
Now, you mentioned you don't see Æthelhelm as much of like an evil guy, but certainly is an antagonist in the show. Do you enjoy playing that kind of antagonist?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's I mean, it's more reactive, which is always nice, because you're having to adapt to events as they go along, and almost certainly it's not going to be a smooth ride. So that's all good fun. and that you're constantly looking for favor. You know, you're looking to seduce or persuade, or get people to trust you even when they shouldn't, or whatever it might be. So they have to be very malleable, resourceful characters,
right.
Antagonists, which I think is fun. Yeah. The question of whether he's evil or not is, I mean, just from the point of view of acting, it is it's not very interesting. I mean, I can twiddle my moustache and go meh, if I want
right.
to, but I mean, he's not an out and out baddie in that sense. He's somebody who's got a very, very particular focus about what he wants.
Ambitious.
And he's ambitious. He's ambitious for his grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean, none of this is coming to him. Right. I think he enjoys the power. I think he likes to be the power behind the throne.
Yeah.
He's not a particularly flamboyant person. He doesn't need people to know. He prefers to work quietly and get his way. But, he's certainly ruthless.
Yeah.
He doesn't. But I just point you in the direction of pretty much any of the other characters. I mean, how much do they really value human life for the sake of it? They don't, really. I mean, they're perfectly happy to sacrifice people all over the place in order to get what they want. So, I mean, he's not that different.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe he's not quite as charming. He doesn't smile as much. Maybe that's it. He hasn't got Uhtred's physique. That's it.
No. When we meet Æthelhelm, though, it's already, he's already done pretty well for himself. Is there any backstory that you had in your head for him that we don't see before that?
Well, only that he's probably he's kind of, GOP. He's arch conservative. He's not being convinced, I think, by Alfred's plan to bring together, England or the Saxon nations. I mean, he's a very rich man with a large army of his own who's really kept separate up to that point. So, I mean, obviously he's seen an opportunity there, and he doesn't have sons, so he needs to marry his daughter in order to secure his legacy. I mean, I think that he's somebody who has deliberately sat on the sidelines and bided his time.
Yeah.
The way in which kings operated really until, into the 19th century, I suppose, very, very powerful noblemen were basically were completely in charge of their own bit of land. They could do whatever they liked. There wasn't any imperial or royal or army that could really just march in and take it. So if you want to just sit at home in your however many thousands of acres and just say, I'm staying here now, it's mine. I mean, unless he got into trouble, but obviously he was sufficiently powerful and sufficiently well defended to not have to worry about the Danes too much. So I just think he's waiting for his moment.
Yeah. And do you see him as the person who kind of brought that knowledge of like the fortifying Winchester with the walls? Is that kind of his influence early in season 4?
He did. Yes. I mean, I think that was, I mean, his whole, I mean, he's sort of rather conservative the way he does those sort of things. It's not he doesn't go, let's go and attack. He says, build fortifications and move out and let them come to us. If they do, then we're able to. But I mean, all this business of all these young hot-headed boys running off to fight each other, it doesn't, they just one lot wins, then the other lot wins. It's a silly way of doing it. So I think that is his influence. I mean, also he's very military minded. I mean, he was not interested in the library. Yeah. And that was actually changed then into a sort of war room, wasn't it?
Yep.
He's a bit of a Nazi, really. I think. Well, I mean, I think in that he's seen as a cold, rather merciless, rather uncultured man in that sense. He's not got any of the subtlety that Alfred had. Right.
But that's kind of worked for him probably, before we met him. And obviously he was very successful in whatever he did. Absolutely. Yeah. But then we see that again when you say to Alfred, if you rule the sword, you rule the land. So we'll see if that's kind of maybe foreshadowing for what kind of character your grandson's going to be. We'll see. It becomes pretty cool.
Yeah. So, what were some of your favorite scenes to shoot from season 4 or even season 3?
It's quite difficult to choose. I mean, as I said, I love doing that stuff in the chapel when we were all imprisoned. I love that little scene I had with Harry at the wedding as well. That was great. The big battle scenes are marvelous. I mean, I haven't actually been involved in much in the way of battles themselves, but the aftermath of the battle with the Welsh was
Ethel Hall. Yeah,
Ethel Hall, and
you could tell that Ethel fled off.
Yeah, I mean, and quite rightly, I mean, they've made a terrible mess of everything. It is awful. I mean, that's the thing you've always got to remember. You've got this guy you don't like who's telling off one of the characters that you do like.
Right.
Go, but he's right. He's right. She's got a load of people killed completely unnecessarily because she didn't do what she was told.
Exactly. It's the same thing with Alfred a lot. Like, we don't like him a lot, but if you look from his point of view, it's like, I mean, would you do anything different from his point of view? It's
I mean, I think that's one of the I think it's one of the things that David did so well, and also I think it is obviously in the writing that he's not concerned with being liked. He's obviously making very, very measured and rather cold-hearted decisions quite a lot of the time. I think it's really good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And one of the big scenes in season 3 when we noticed he was the haggle. Let's get down to the haggling. If you remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right at the beginning, I think.
It was early on.
Haggle. He says, "Oh yes, I do like a good haggle.
I do enjoy a good haggle."
Yeah, something like that. But again, you see, in that one, Fred gives away a great deal more than you probably would have expected him to. I mean, basically, I get everything that I've asked for. Alfred is not well, and he knows he's going to die, and I take the opportunity to get what I can out of him. But he rolls over.
Yeah.
He gives it to me.
Yeah. One moment Steve and I really like is when he says something about your daughter, about how I see your deep love for your daughter, and it just focuses on you just closing your eyes and nodding in satisfaction.
No, yeah. I think is it a deep love for your daughter or something, or rather both of them being parents?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I've got not the slightest interest in my daughter. Bless her. I mean, she's there as far as I'm concerned. She's useful.
Exactly.
But I don't think that he really. I think that is one of the things that's unattractive about Æthelhelm is he doesn't actually form real friendships or relationships. I think he's a bit of a psychopath from that point of view. He doesn't, she's got a job to do. As long as she does her job, that's fine. Yeah. But I don't think there's any real basic affection.
One of our favorite scenes, I think we touched on it briefly, was the scene where you take Uhtred down to get tortured. You want to know the information about where Æthelflaed's daughter's at. That was like the first sort of, I guess, torture scene that we've seen in the show. How was that filming that scene there with the rest of their cast?
It was fine. I think that the fact that somebody would dare to treat Uhtred that way was something that the fans, I think, found quite shocking. And also, you haven't really, although you might have suspected Æthelhelm was capable of that sort of thing, you've again not really seen him do it. I also think it was a very bad misjudgment of Æthelhelm to do that, because, and I think that is his weakness, is that he underestimates people, and he would never have believed that Uhtred is as clever as he is. He thinks Uhtred's just a sort of meathead warrior, interesting, who's although he may be a Saxon by blood, he's basically a Dane. And so he's not to be trusted. He's impulsive. He's guided by bloodlust or just lust. And he wouldn't really think of him as being a strategic thinker. And that's a mistake, because he obviously is.
Yeah, that traces back to season 3 too, when he comes in from the Dane camp, and you're pretty much telling everyone that he's probably a spy. And so, yeah, but it's interesting because you haven't really been around to see Uhtred's history, other than he looks like a Dane. So
exactly. And there's nothing in the chronicles about it. That's part of that season, really. And as far as I'm concerned, he's just this heathen who goes everywhere with armed to the teeth, and doesn't even worship the right gods. So he's and I think that's an important. Again, that's with the sort of conservative hat on. It's very important to Æthelhelm that people are Saxon Christians, not because he believes in God. It's just that those are the people who are on my side.
Yeah, gotcha.
And if you lie outside that, then you're automatically untrustworthy or suspect.
Interesting.
Yeah, going along with what you said, Edward eventually pulls your character aside, and he even tells him, what you've been doing hasn't been very Christian. He's like, which was funny that he pointed that out. As far as getting Ellsworth locked up and Uhtred beat up. Yeah, but I think that Christian is just kind of the name of his team. I don't think it's something that I don't think that he takes. I mean, I don't think that makes him a hypocrite exactly. I think there are plenty of people whose identity is one thing, and whose way of behaving seems to be at odds with it. But I mean, not everybody who was a Christian in the 9th and 10th century would be a very devout person, or somebody who necessarily knew a great deal about it. I mean, the same as now. I mean, it's not that. I don't think that in itself is a terrible indictment. As far as he's concerned, you exercise power in order to get the things that you want.
Right.
And saying it's not very Christian is kind of, well, yeah, and
what else you got, Edward?
Well, it's interesting. Edward does tell you to get the information out of Uhtred, and he tells you to publicly rebuke Ellsworth. You just kind of take it farther, a little bit over the line maybe, but he did ask you to get the info out, or to try to get the info out. So it's interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And Edward is angry with both of them, and I encourage that anger, which means that the instructions he gives me are sufficiently loose that I can just about say. I mean, he couldn't really go, "You've overstepped yourself to such a degree, you've humiliated me and made a nonsense of the chain of command, so I'm going to have you executed." I was just about within the letter of,
he didn't
not
say
the spirit, but within the letter of the law.
He didn't say not beat up Uhtred.
No,
He said get the info.
He said get the info.
Yeah. He didn't specify. So, but it's interesting. And then I love the scene where you go to the guard, Kaenric, kind of the new right-hand man after Steapa. Yeah. And you kind of say, oh, well, the king wouldn't say this, but it's what he wants. That kind of... Yeah.
I mean, Kaenric's very much my man, I think.
Yeah. It seemed like Steapa kind of became your man too early on.
Well, I think that again, these guys aren't strategists, but they do believe in the sort of fairly forceful rule of law, and that's what their job is. So if they have somebody who's supporting that, they're not in a position to contradict me either. I mean, I'm sort of unofficial second in command.
True.
So all I've really got to do is say, I'm taking responsibility for this, and they'll do it.
Absolutely. So what are some things that you love about Æthelhelm?
I like his resourcefulness. I like the fact that although he gets knocked back quite a lot, he never ever gives up. I like his intelligence. I like the fact that he's not impulsive. He never really does anything without thinking it through. I mean, I quite like if he was impulsive, but I think he's a well thought out character.
I find it very intimidating that to have somebody that smart within the Palace of Winchester in Edward's ear, and to see that he's walking around at the end of season 4 like nothing's wrong is kind of an intimidating thing leading into season 5 for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. I'm glad that's the case. I mean, I don't think that he's necessarily any more intelligent than Elspeth or Edward or Uhtred or many of them, or indeed Æthelhelm. Æthelhelm, but I think that the thing is that's his shtick. You know, that's the center of what he's doing. I mean, with Elspeth, the center is sort of to continue the crusade, if you like. With Edward, it's somehow to be his father's son. You know,
Right.
with Uhtred, it's to get bloody Bevenberg back again. Well, so he's doing really badly at that. I mean, you know,
yeah.
I hope he gets it. Hope he gets it this time. You know, bless him.
I know. We'll see.
Fifth time's the charm. That's what they always say.
That's the phrase.
Yeah, he's very good at fighting other people's battles. He's not so good at winning his own.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah. So what are some challenges when it comes to playing Æthelhelm?
The costume is very, very hot. So that's
Really?
a challenge. Well, I mean, the Hungarian summers are pretty hot. So
It looks
that's
really
a
hot.
challenge,
Yeah.
you know. But when you're on a horse with armor and bloody great fluffy cloak and it's 40 degrees, it is a challenge, frankly, not to just faint and fall off. I think what I want to do, what I try to do, is really to do as little as possible, because I think it's so much of what he does sort of speaks for itself, that if you overlay it, I mean, it's a good sort of basic tip for acting anyway, is do as little as possible. But by which I mean, you know, don't tend to overspeak. People tend to think that just saying the thing that they mean will communicate whatever it is they're trying to say.
Gotcha.
That applies to people on the TV as well. So,
Yeah.
but I think that he is somebody who is naturally of very little words. He plays his cards very close to his chest. You know, the temptation. Every now and then he might sort of shout, but generally speaking, I mean, even in that torture scene with Uhtred, it's just sort of saying, well, why don't you just tell us, because it would be quicker. You know, this is going to happen if you don't.
Absolutely.
But there's no kind of, you don't have to add anything to that.
Gotcha.
Because the stories are told. So.
Yeah, that's one thing we talked earlier about the Star Wars and how it kind of didn't go the way everyone wanted to go. I noticed the antagonists in that, a lot of them yell a lot. You know, Hux and Kylo Ren, they're doing a lot of yelling. They're very emotional all the time.
That's at some point, yeah. But you see, I think they're different. So that's a different kind of, you know, if you're on the dark side of the Force, then you're kind of boiling with hatred, aren't you? I mean, that's sort of, you know, if you're a Sith, you know, it's a very active anger, which is constantly going on. Whereas, you know, if you're on the good side of the Force, then you stay calm, you know. Yeah. But I don't think, again, you see, I don't think that he's not an angry baddie. I mean, I'm not. You know, Æthelhelm is a relatively cool plotter.
He is.
And that's why whenever he fails, he can always reach for something else, because it doesn't destroy him to lose.
Yeah,
He's
interesting.
not going, no! You know?
He's more of the old Empire, like the original trilogy. You know, he'd be in there with Darth Vader, I think. He'd be up on the...
He'd get on well with Palpatine. I think he's more like Palpatine, really, although I think...
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But that's maybe... I'd be overstating both my own abilities and his role to bet the comparison. But, I mean, he is more like the sort of smiling, thinking person than he is the, you know, I don't know, some berserker. Well, the berserkers. See, the berserkers are the Danes.
Yeah,
I mean, they literally are. They love it, and you know, Breda is completely motivated by revenge. And she wants her revenge, and she wants to drink it down, and, you know, have a bath in the blood that comes. You know, but that's where you get that, but not Æthelhelm. He's not interested in that. He's quietly. I mean, I don't think that Æthelhelm will really take massive satisfaction from achieving what he wants.
Interesting. It does seem
once he's done it, it's kind of okay. Next.
Yeah.
Whereas Heston gloating over Uhtred hanging upside down from a tree. I mean, he could have done that for...
It does seem like reputation is something that's very important to Æthelhelm, though, because of there's a scene in season 3 where they're talking about, oh, we heard a rumor about you in the whorehouse, in the alehouse.
Well, I think that's... Yeah, but not reputation in the... I think he has a fear of humiliation. I think that's a different thing.
Okay.
I think he likes to be treated with respect, and to have, some fat priest making insinuations about him going to the whorehouse is like, who the hell's he? He's just a guy in a cassock. And he really, I don't know who he is, but it's like that's more a question of hierarchy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting perspective there.
Yeah. I don't know whether he really cares about if people are. I mean, I think so long as people are respectful to him and scared of him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think he needs anyone to. I don't need anyone to like him very much. But I don't think that he. Also, I don't think he's interested in fame in the Viking sense of this sort of because that was very much a Viking thing, wasn't it? This idea that all you really had was your reputation.
Yeah. True. That's a good point.
That's what you took with you to Valhalla.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good point. And you got where you are, kind of that softly, strategically, but you don't take crap from anybody either. If somebody comes up and...
I mean, I think he was, he's a rich man, but he was a rich, he's inherited wealth.
Mm-hmm.
He's an aristocrat. And it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve it, but he had a good head start, but he knew how to use it.
One thing I really enjoy about your character is the way you can kind of turn a phrase, the way you kind of can word things to make it sound the way you want it to sound to somebody. For example, when Uhtred's kind of talking about taking Bebbanburg, and he's talking about, oh, it'll be great. You're going to have a foothold in Northumbria. You're going to, be able to unite the kingdoms. And then you kind of turn it and use like the wording, why do we want to ride to the frozen north for a family feud? Kind of diminish what that is. Cool.
Well, I mean, that's not me. It's nice. It's very nice. It's very nicely written. It's very nicely written. And it is exactly that. It's just, I mean, basically I say, so these are the things you want to do, but I pass it in a way which makes it seem a great deal less attractive without actually contradicting. But why would we want to go to a place that we don't really want to be, to weaken ourselves here when we've got Danes on our doorstep, to gain something which is of no particular use to us? I mean, I can see why you want to, Mr. Uhtred, but I can't see why we would want to.
It's not just out of spite for Uhtred. It's actually a kind of a smart strategic thing that he believes for Winchester and Wessex at that point.
Well, I think that's true, and I think that, I think it is a smart strategic thing, but I think if you do think that he has a different agenda, I mean, anybody who's pursuing their own agenda, if they can persuade themselves that asking for something which is to their advantage, if they can persuade themselves that they're asking for something, it's a classic con man thing, really. If I'm a good con man, if I can persuade you that the thing that profits me actually profits you, and if I can believe that it profits you for as long as I'm doing the con, then I'm more likely to pull it off. It's not always a question of being. It's not always a question of lying or dissembling.
Right.
It's actually to use Kellyanne Conway's phrase. It's alternative facts. Find those alternative facts and believe them very, very hard.
It's interesting. It kind of reminded me of like the current news media about how it kind of can cover one event, and one news media might put it as a negative light, and the other might put it as a very positive light. And that's kind of how it kind of
absolutely. That's very much, very much so. And I think particularly in the times that we're living in now, it's I think a lot of people do have a real difficulty in keeping a hold on things being, what is true and what is false, and is this person acting for the good of the country or for their own benefit, and are they, whatever it is, whether it's coronavirus or
So
your upcoming election, or I think there is genuine confusion,
absolutely,
and it's exploited by people.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of current events and coronavirus, episode 6 was kind of a weird one for us to watch. Could you talk a little bit about, like, you filmed, obviously nobody knew what was going to happen when you guys filmed it, but
no, because that was last summer.
Yeah.
It did have a funny kind of flavor to it, didn't it? As a result,
because of when it came out and stuff, and it was just interesting. Closing the borders and everything, and
we were both in the heat of our quarantine in April when it came out, and it was just got the heart pounding. Brought you back to reality during that episode.
Yeah, well, we're not letting them into Mercia anyway.
Closing borders. Yeah,
I think there were pretty regular sicknesses and plagues back around then. Of course, I mean, there was no treatment for anything, so you really did just have to let it go until people died.
Yeah, just had to try to protect yourselves.
I find it quite extraordinary that anybody survived at all, Frank.
I know.
Yeah, that's what we were talking to Harry about. Just to be alive back then, had to be so tough because. Can you imagine?
Well, life expectancy was considerably shorter. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s now, and that, would have been an old man. I mean, some people lived, 80, 90 years, lucky ones.
Yeah.
There was an awful lot more. I mean, and rural living was very perfectly healthy, and There's a Viking burial near where I am here in North Norfolk, which was excavated a decade or two ago, and the people there were 6 feet tall and so on. They had good diets, and nobody killed them. They were fine. So I mean, if you could keep out of urban living, I think was much more dangerous from the point of view of disease, because nobody had any idea about hygiene. Didn't know what it was for, really. So I think an awful lot of the sort of diseases that humans suffer from come from the fact that there are so many of us and we live in such close proximity.
So it seems like you know your history pretty good. Are you a big kind of history buff before you got on the show?
I read.
Yeah. Had you read the books, the Bernard Cornwell books before?
I hadn't, no.
Interestingly,
actually, I didn't really know anything about for my shame, I was a big fan of Vikings. I've been watching all those, and when I think I just finished watching season 5 or whatever it was at that point, and I was thinking, what should I watch now? And I was just starting to watch The Last Kingdom, and the phone call came in. I was like, oh wow, I'll settle down and watch a couple of seasons of this then. That'd be nice.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. We did the opposite. We watched Last Kingdom, and we were like, oh, we need more fix. And then we got to Vikings, which we also enjoyed very much.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. I think Vikings is super. I really do. Yeah. I really enjoy it.
It's kind of like the prequel to The Last Kingdom.
Well, there is an overlap, and there are some couple of the same characters here and there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They do it a little differently, but
yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But they sort of feels like they're competitors. We've always felt slightly like we were competitors, and we're quite so. People were quietly pleased with the reception that season 4 got as a result.
Yeah. I mean, we always kind of preferred Last Kingdom. We did enjoy Vikings very much, but
yeah, it's super. I think one shouldn't really compare, and certainly not from within the business. I think I like Last Kingdom better because I'm in it, and all my friends are. But I mean, I know Peter Frampton quite well, who plays King Harold in the Vikings. He's a lovely chap. I did a film with him. So I think it's marvelous way.
That's awesome. We're going to have a little bit more Vikings soon, and we'll have some Last Kingdom not too far, hopefully, in the future. Any other shows that you like to watch?
I've enjoyed The Witcher. That's good fun. In the same sort of vein. There's a lot of. I've just been actually because it's sort of lockdown time. I've been going back and I've just restarted watching The Sopranos, which I love. The Sopranos. I tend to sort of wolf up something. What was I watching? It's that German show, The Dark.
Oh, yeah, I like that a lot.
It's so good,
yeah.
Really good. Yeah, so we just did all that. I mean, we tend to settle down and watch a couple of episodes of something every night, Try not to binge it all. I mean, we were binging quite a lot when my baby's quite young still. He's only 18 months. So in those first few months when he needs to be fed every 3 hours, whether you like it or not, and he just screams. So if you were kind of on nights sitting there, and we'd each have our shows that we would binge separately. Sit down. Has he gone to sleep yet? No. Next one.
We know Last Kingdom's coming up. Any other shows for you in the future, or movies that we can look forward to? Any other works?
Well, there's a movie that I just finished shooting. Actually, they're supposed to have finished before Christmas, but we still had some pickups to do, and then the COVID came along, which is it's called Censor. The director's an English woman called Prana Bailey Bond. It's a relatively low budget horror, but I think it should be really good. It's not going to be out for. I mean, they've literally just wrapped last week with the pickups, so I'm not sure when it will appear or the distribution. I don't know what the distribution will be in the first place. I should imagine they'll do some festivals with it. I mean, there is other stuff in theory coming up for me, which I can't really tell you until it's properly. I mean, I would do. It's just that the difficulty at the moment is scheduling has got so difficult because everything's been pushed back by 6 months. Yeah. So now everything that you thought you were going to do, they're all sitting on top of each other, and you just don't know which ones are going to work. And I'd hate to say, I'm playing so and so in this series, and then it ends up being somebody else. Not because of me, but partly because the role has to belong to whoever does it. So right. And so there's a couple of things like that which I very much hope I can do. But if I can't, then someone else is going to have to do them, because that's just the way of it. They've got to get made one way or another. There's a backlog of shows that haven't been made.
Gotcha.
As you can imagine.
Gotcha.
And we need to get on and make them, or you're going to run out of telly. And that wouldn't do.
Cool. So do you have any other goals as an actor with your career? Anything else you'd really like to do?
I haven't got specific goals in terms of roles, because I don't know what's out there. But I like to play these sort of antagonist roles, and I hope that those keep coming.
Cool.
I haven't done any theatre for a long time. In fact, the last time I did a stage show was 6 years ago now, because I've been doing sort of television and film mostly, and I missed that. So I really would like to get back on stage. I mean, really, it's bizarre. I mean, from the age of 17 or something, I don't think a year passed where I didn't do at least 2 or 3 plays. And then about six years ago, I've just finished doing a big thing in the West of London, and then just haven't done anything since. And it's just a bit strange, really. I need to
not be in theatre.
Yeah. So I want to do some more theatre, but I mean, I like this long form television, and I like having characters which unfold over seasons and seasons. That's a nice thing to be doing. So I mean, I'd like to see more of that. But we're all rather in the lap of the gods. I mean, there are a small handful of people who can really do what they like in this business. And then there's quite a lot of people who do perfectly well, but they have to wait and see what's out there a little bit more. So I don't know. I think that I suit my face better now than I used to, and I hope that helps. But I'm in the lap of the gods a bit. I mean, I think one of the other things is concentrating on one's own work as an actor, is an interpretive role. And actually, the creation of the characters and the creation of the stories is very much the producer's and the writer's job. And it's good to stay a bit clear of that. Otherwise, you've got the wrong bit of you invested. I think, well, for me, I mean, not for everybody, but for me.
Right. Interesting. Is there any movie franchise or anything like that you dreamed of being in, or anything, or just whatever came?
Well, I've heard they're starting to remake the Dune stuff. I'd be interested in that.
Oh.
Did you know that?
Yeah, they are. I think Josh Brolin. I think he's in the new one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I don't know how much of it. I mean, it's a huge. The series of books is enormous. They're doing the Asimovs, I believe, or the Foundation series.
Oh. So those are things that you'd like to get into, maybe, if the opportunity came across.
Yeah, I would. I tell you what, I would like. I'd like to do a big sci-fi thing. I mean, I love it. I love a bit of sci-fi. Bit of spaceships and lightsabers. Cool. Great fun.
Hey,
doesn't have to be Star Wars. big old sci-fi. That'd be fun.
Well, it looks like they're going to be making a lot of Star Wars movies, hopefully in maybe a different direction than the last trilogy. But, you never know.
Well, I mean, I love the Mandalorian. It's fantastic.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Absolutely.
I think you'd be really good as an Empire guy on The Mandalorian. I think you'd do really well there.
Well, if they kill off what's his name, who's just emerged at the end, I like him. He was the guy who's in Breaking Bad. I've forgotten the actor's name.
He plays Gus Fring in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's really good.
Yeah, well, he's their Empire evil man, isn't he? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's gonna be tough. They kind of introduce him pretty late too, as a
so he'll definitely be throughout season 2.
Yeah.
But if they can kill him towards the end, then I can go in for season 3.
And you can you go steal that Darksaber, then you'll have that. Then we'll get some.
That's how we'll do it.
That's awesome. Steve, do you have any other questions for Adrian?
No. Thank you again so much for talking with us today. It's been great.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And, well, thanks very much for asking me. And we'll try and keep you abreast of what's going on. I don't think I've let any trade secrets go yet, have I, about next season? So
I don't think so.
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
We could have tried harder, though.
Yeah. But
it's not worth it. This is Netflix you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not aware. Yeah. My lips are very, very legally sealed.
Where can people find you if they want to see more of you? We know you're on Twitter. They can check out your IMDb. I get angry about politics on Twitter, and people want to follow me doing that. They're very welcome, but it's not very show busy. I don't really do socials much. Again, maybe it's just I'm too bloody old. But it just confuses me. What's the point of Instagram? People put pictures of themselves doing things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Videos.
You just have to be young and otherwise it's pointless, isn't it? I mean, anyway.
Well, here's a recommendation. If you don't want to be on it, don't start because it's very addictive. It's really hard to get off.
I think I've got an Instagram account.
Oh, do you?
I think someone set one up for me. I don't think I've ever used it. Don't think so. If there's anything on it, wasn't me.
There's a lot of funny.
Anything dodgy definitely wasn't me.
All right, wasn't you? Okay. There's a lot of funny videos, funny Star Wars memes and stuff. Steve and I share on there. That's
right.
What we like. Yeah.
Right.
So
maybe I'll have a look.
But yeah. So thank you for everyone who's listened. I'm Colby, and that's Steve from the Screen Chronicles. Today we had Adrian Schiller for a great talk. Please check us out. Please subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter. We're now on Twitter, everybody. So please check us out there. But from now on, goodbye from the Screen Chronicles and Adrian Schiller.
Goodbye. Thanks again, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian.